What up, Shinigami Kai? Shinigami here. And welcome back to another episode of Black Belt Dots. But before we begin, I want to shout out Make My Patch. They're a custom patch maker from France, and they made, for an actually really reasonable price, they made my custom logo patch that you will see very soon on the back of the gi I fight in Street Beefs, and I'm going to use it at this tournament I'm doing in Vegas next week. So shout out to them. They also made me a nice custom black and red Shotokan patch for my other tournament gi, so that it'll mostly match. Most of the stuff on my gi will be black and red and white, which is the Kempo colors. Even though it's a Shotokan patch, but the Shotokan, well, one of the Shotokan associations does use red, white, and black. So, this was originally actually going to get taken off of this gi and go on the white gi I bought to do Kata, which flows us right into today's video. But before that, I also want to shout out the awesome fan that I met at the gas station the other day after I was done training, while I was trying to get my sponsors to help me out with my travel costs to get to the tournament because it's in Vegas. And out of the blue, after we're done talking and he drove off, really cool guy, by the way. I hope I do get to see you again, even though you won't be working in Lancaster anymore. Drove back around and surprised me with a $100 bill, which is going to help me out a lot towards that travel fee. So thank you for helping sponsor my my tournament travel expenses. If you see this, hit me up on Instagram, because I know you subscribe to my channel. So if you see this, hit me up on Instagram and give me some shipping information. I'm going to send you something as a thank you that I think you'll appreciate. Anyway, as I was saying, this episode of Black Belt Dots is going to be about Kata. And part of what spurred this video was I've been featured on fight commentary breakdowns, and ever since I sent some videos of me doing Street Beefs, I've actually been in really direct contact with Jerry, the host over there. And he sent me a link to a group started by Rokas from Martial Arts Journey, who's someone I'd eventually like to talk to. He's on the YouTube martial artist list, or YouTube martial arts YouTube list of creators that I'd like to talk to. Obviously, Jesse Incamp would be like the big one, and Icy Mike, because Street Beefs and everything. And I've actually talked to him too, but that's a little bit of a tangent. So I was going through, you know, I tried to join the group. My request hasn't been accepted yet, but I was going through the posts, and there were a few posts from the one and only legendary John Hackelman from The Pit, who's trained such legends as Chuck Liddell. And he had a little video about how katas are bullcrap, and how bunkai is made up nonsense and is bullcrap too, and kata is useless. And you know, I vehemently disagree. Kata has a purpose. You know, I get that he took kata out of his system when he made his own system off of his base art, and made the Pit Swine Kempo. Anyway, I vehemently disagree. I think kata are a very important training tool. It's definitely the art part of the art in martial art. You know, it isn't just learning katas that are preset. Part of my dojo's curriculum is actually, once you start hitting certain belt levels for your test, you have to start making up katas on the spot. And then for my black belt test, I had to create I think it was a 50 or 75 move kata that I had time to make it in advance. It wasn't on the spot, which I really incorporated stuff that wasn't even just Kempo and Shotokan into. I kind of mixed the two, but I also threw in a little bit of Jiu-Jitsu. And while you may not see it, if you see the kata, you might just see a front roll and not realize what it is. Bunkai is definitely not made up nonsense trying to make the kata valid. Um, Kata are patterns, and as far as martial arts goes, it's a pattern of it's a pre-made pattern of movements that are practical to your art. So they develop stances, leg strength. I mean, it's a good anaerobic exercise. It utilizes every muscle in your body. If you do kata properly, like once you get to where you can do all the moves sharp and focus on um, executing them rather than practicing them to learn them, you do a kata once and you break a sweat. And I don't care how in shape you are, if you do it right, you will always break a sweat doing kata. So that's just one of the many uses. Also, I apologize for any background noise. It's killer hot right now. We're going through a massive heat wave. We're actually in a extreme heat advisory through Saturday at 9 p.m. So I have my fan and my air conditioning on because it's just too cold in here. I mean, too hot in here. I mean, it needs to be colder. Anyway, back to what I was saying. Sorry, I was just having a hard time keeping on track just because I'm kind of tired. I've been really pushing myself hard this week with that tournament coming up because I'm trying to drop some weight off, and being out of training for 2 weeks because I was sick. I wanted to make sure I got a COVID test that was negative before I went back to training. Yeah, just trying to make sure I'm ready for this tournament. But Jesse Henkamp has covered this too. Kata it just means pattern, and there's in Japan and Okinawa, there's kata for everything. How to make tea, how to make dinner, how to put your clothes on, how to fold your clothes to put them away, how to put your shoes on and take them off, when you exit or enter a house. All of that. Probably kata for how to bathe yourself too. But as far as bunkai being, nonsense too, that's absolutely not the case. Kata is like an outline, right? And it takes different concepts and different techniques and combines them together as a flowing set of movements. And the idea behind teaching bunkai for these traditional katas is here's where each point of the outline branches into what you're going to use this as in real life for self-defense. Which, now, don't get me wrong, there are problems with how bunkai is taught in a lot of places, and that is got a lot to do with keeping it traditional, even though it was never intended to be used that way. And a lot of that has to do with Gishin Funakoshi emphasizing kata a lot more in training, and the Japanese standardizing karate into a competition format and gradable system that could be taught to an entire class uniformly, versus the way it was intended to be used in Okinawa, as it was supposed to be adjusted to the individual based on their body type, age, physical ability, etc. But to say that kata is absolutely useless and that bunkai is nonsense is with all due respect to Master Hackelman, just absolutely wrong. And I say that as somebody who has obviously done various types of competition, including full contact MMA, and come from a kind of traditional background of hybridization of American Kempo and Shotokan, where we use those katas instead of Kempo forms for a couple of reasons. My Shion, John Ramsey, had taken over a Shotokan school, and while he is a 6th degree black belt in Shotokan, he is mainly a Kempo practitioner. and at this point, I believe is actually associate master. The last time I saw him, um, and while he didn't emphasize the bunkai as much because our self defense came from the kempo system, we still did a little bit of it. And the way we did it was almost the way we do our kempo, where we'll learn the technique as it was taught by Ed Parker, and then we'll start, as you progress, we start modifying it. And even as an earlier belt, yellow, orange, you're still encouraged to start thinking about what can you do if something, that's more real world, where you're never going to start a self-defense technique and finish it as it's taught. I mean, even the self-defense techniques in American Kempo or any system really are not meant to be used from start to finish. And any instructor that tells you they are is probably McDojoing you for your money. And the reason I say that is because those set techniques, just like Shotokan, traditional, Okinawan katas from any Okinawan karate art, any hardstyle karate art, are there to teach you concepts and principles and dynamics of how the body works and how the body reacts. So your kata is more for your solo training. Your bunkai would be more your partner training, where you're getting the more practical side of it. And then as far as my school is concerned, we do the Kempo self-defense, and then we adapt from there. Like we'll start emphasizing, okay, someone's attacking you, and this is how they're going to swing at you in the real world. How do you apply what you've learned? And I really feel like it's taking way too much away from traditional karate and traditional forms, katas, what have you, depending on what your style calls them. Kata, actually, since there's no plural in Japanese that's separate from the singular. Kata is an extremely valuable tool. It's an extremely important part of training, and is a good way to be able to train solo. And a lot of things from, every aspect of fighting are in kata. There's an excellent channel that I suggest you check out if you haven't, called Karate Culture, where they emphasize bringing all of that back and returning karate to being a complete art like it was in Okinawa prior to the Japanese stripping away all the grappling and submissions from it in order to separate it from judo and jujutsu and sumo, which are Japan's three primary arts, which were all grappling arts. So, yeah, are kata useless? No. Is bunkai nonsense? Is it woo-woo magic nonsense? No. It's a lot of things in martial arts too don't necessarily come down to just what you train, but how you train it. So, again, as Jesse Encamp has said, you can't just learn your techniques or your bunkai and apply them to a step through straight karate punch or what have you. That's your karate basic stuff. You have to take them and you have to pressure test them, or at least ease into that by using what you have learned and applying it against someone attacking you with more common real world stuff that you're probably going to encounter, like wild haymaker rights, sloppy jabs, flurries of hands coming at you. And then you can start going into more, because that's 99% of what you're going to deal with in the real world is, that kind of stuff. People trying to grab you, people trying to take you down, whether they've learned a grappling art or not, because everyone watches the UFC and think they're going to shoot for a takedown and get it so they can ground and pound you, which isn't, necessarily real or realistic against a trained opponent, even against someone who's not a trained grappler, because they're probably going to outdo you with footwork if you're not trained. But, that's where you got to go. And then you can start getting into dealing with more higher level, like trained fighter type guys that are gonna maybe throw like boxing stuff at you, or you know, throw more trained kicks. Then you deal with that kind of stuff. Someone's gonna be throwing feints and footwork, but that's not what you're gonna find in a street fight a lot. And a lot of these guys that you hear about talking about stuff like today, like you know, as a matter of fact, I was watching the last episode of Fighter and the Kids the other day, where Chappelle had talked about some Master Wong video. And I've actually had a debate about this with another Street Beefs guy who showed up to have a beef fight with Scarface. The only guy who ever showed up for a beef fight with Scarface. And he sent it to me because they were talking about how it's all bullshit and nonsense like that. But there are a lot of guys like Cupcake, who I was debating with, and Brendan Schaub, and even Brian Callen. He was a Taekwondo guy. And even in the 80s, Taekwondo was more sport-oriented than anything else. And I've trained with Taekwondo guys. I've been to Taekwondo classes. I've watched them. I've seen how they train. Almost everything they do is for kicks. Even their self-defense stuff mostly deals with kicks that I've seen. So, you know, things like parries and blocks and like more traditional stuff that these guys are trained more in sport-oriented stuff don't seem to understand that stuff does work, and that videos like that Master Wong video are kind of like a small chunk, a slowed down moment in time to demonstrate a dynamic of a technique or a, you know, concept. You know, like trying to say that boxers would be doing what Master Wong was doing if that worked against boxers. I'll tell you right now, as someone who does open-handed parries to redirect stuff, that Wing Chun does similar stuff, Kempo does it. It works. It does work, but the problem is if you're wearing boxing gloves, you know, the formation your hand needs to be in to do those parries really effectively and to make checks and grab things. You can't be wearing boxing gloves. Boxing gloves force your hands into this formation, and even with the padding, you try to do something like that, you might actually hurt yourself. And then things like that, just like the stuff in Kata, a lot of times it's for a committed punch. I'm not going to knife hand block somebody who's trying to just feint me out. It's never going to happen. Blocks, parries, you got to do that stuff with committed strikes. So katas and stuff like self-defense technique demonstrations absolutely are not useless. You know, there's just this outward perception that they don't work because, you know, I think you have stuff like videos where you have McDojos who don't know what they're doing, teaching nonsense bunkai that are actually nonsense because these guys who are running these dojos probably never trained a day in their life or never made it very far and decided, well, I'm just going to buy a black belt and buy a gi and rent a studio and make money. You know, and some of the others are just so traditional that they will not evolve what the bunkai are. They teach it as they were taught it and don't factor into account, you know, making it more modernized or realistic. But again, that doesn't make them useless at all. There's still valuable concepts in them. You know, it's all about the way you train it, with very few exceptions. And that's why guys like Xu Xiaodong are able to just humiliate a lot of these traditional Chinese masters from arts like Tai Chi, because a lot of those schools don't spar or pressure test or anything. They just teach the way they were taught and do drills, and that's fine. Drills are great. Drills build up muscle memory. But without a resisting opponent, without someone attacking you, even if they're not trying to full-on hurt you, even if it's just a light sparring class, you're never going to build the reaction time you need. You're never going to build the awareness you need. And you're never going to build the proper reaction time for real incoming stuff. So you got to find the balance. You gotta keep. I mean, I really think there's value in maintaining kata as part of a curriculum. Even I myself, when I have my own school and I have my own curriculum and kind of start my own style and system, which is the goal. You know, I'll be teaching grappling as part of it. I will be teaching everything I've learned. I will be teaching kata for sure, and a couple other things from a couple other arts that I want to learn along the way. But I will definitely be making sure everything is as modernized and updated as possible so that all of my students have a practical understanding and understand the importance of why some of these things are kept as a tradition and that they're the art side of things. And then when you get to the point where you can make your own kata, it shows that you have an understanding of what you have learned, not just from kata, but from self-defense techniques. Because when you make a kata, you're basically doing bunkai in reverse. You have to go, okay, well, here's a technique I learned. How do I make it into a kata movement that can flow into another movement and still be somewhat recognizable as what it's supposed to be, while still flowing into something else that's also recognizable as what it's supposed to be. So that's my thoughts on kata, and I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you know, that you took something valuable from it. And let me know in the comments, do you agree, do you disagree, what are your thoughts on kata? As a bonus, here's a video of me doing kata in the OG Street Beach cage that was inside Neutral Corner when I went there, that is now the cage they use in the yard. For now, Shinigami out.
Shinigami, samurai master, straight up out the land of Lancaster. No one stronger, ain't no one faster. Turning the opponents into Caspers, ghosts, disasters. We don't do no waiting, where I'm from we attack them. Swift KO kick to the chin, leave them napping. Sniff, take a whiff, that's the smell of victory. Better fear, making all my peers' careers history. Big dubs, all we catch is big dubs. Karate chops to his tops, leave them big slumped. Humble beast, beefing in the street, we don't take no loss. You gon' catch defeat, you gon' catch a fist.